Welcome back, my friends. Currently, we're on day 317 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and let's actually read the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense's quote of the day. We'll walk this road together through the storm, whatever weather, cold or warm. And I honestly can't say that I was expecting the Ukrainian MOD to be quoting Eminem in their war against Russia, but here we are. That might be the kind of year that 2023 is going to be. And hallelujah, we got some good news. The United States is sending its next $3 billion military assistance package to Ukraine, and there's some pretty good stuff in here. Today, the Department of Defense announced the Biden administration's commitment of over $3 billion in additional security assistance for Ukraine, $2.85 billion worth of stuff, and then $225 million in military financing. So included in this package, this is the breakthrough, is 50 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles with 500-tow anti-tank missiles and 250,000 rounds of 25mm ammunition. There's also all of this other good stuff, including additional ammunition for the HIMARS system. We got to keep that going. America hasn't run out of Gimlers yet. And I want to share this quote with you from the Commander-in-Chief of Ukraine's Armed Forces. This is Zelenskyy. And he says, "I know that I can beat this enemy, but I need resources. I need 300 tanks, 600 to 700 infantry fighting vehicles, 500 howitzers. I get what I get, but it is less than what I need to defeat Russia, to defeat this current iteration of the Russian Federation forever. Russia's not going to recover from this war when they lose." So what I think is finally happening is the leaders of the G7 are waking up. For the last 10 months, you could argue that some nations, maybe like Germany or France, they were trying to give Putin an off-ramp. And for the last 10 months, Putin has been exclusively driving alone on a highway made of nothing but off-ramps. He's not going to take it. Putin is digging in and preparing to make this war last years. Putin is okay with losing hundreds of thousands of his own soldiers if he can still win at some point years down the road. So what's happening is that the G7 leaders are realizing that the fastest way to end this war now is not Putin taking an off-ramp. It's a Ukrainian military victory. The Russian military has to be expelled from Ukraine for this war to end for everyone. If you want this war to end, arming Ukraine and giving Ukraine offensive weapons is now the consensus opinion. I hope that's what's occurring. So here's an interesting article from the War Zone. Meet all of the heavily armored Western combat vehicles that Ukraine is getting. In this article, they break down each vehicle in much more detail. I'll link this in a pinned comment down below if you want to get more information. But here's the cliff notes. France is sending their AMX-10 RC, Germany is sending Marder 1s, and the United States is sending the M2 Bradley. Now, these are not tanks. They're infantry fighting vehicles. They do have a gun. They do have offensive capabilities. The M2 Bradley has the tow missile, which is basically a javelin missile that can destroy enemy tanks. So these are for moving infantry. A crew of 3 operates the M2 Bradley, and then 8 infantrymen can get in the back of the vehicle for protection from small arms fire, artillery shrapnel, and maybe even landmines. So the West is sending infantry fighting vehicles. This is something Ukraine has been asking for 10 months now. So the only thing missing to pair them with the infantry fighting vehicles are proper tanks. And Poland is considering delivering some of their Leopard 2s to Ukraine. This is a quote from a Polish defense official in a Wall Street Journal article. In addition, Finland has become the first country to announce they are willing to send Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine if other European countries will pitch in. They don't want to be the only country doing this because Russia then might target them exclusively if they're the only country providing tanks. So what's occurring here with all of these announcements is safety in numbers. Russian propaganda can't focus on a single country if all the countries at the same time are announcing and sending these larger, heavier equipments. So what are the European countries that currently have Leopard 2 tanks? And we got Turkey and Greece, 354, 353. Spain has 327. Poland has 257. Germany has 245. The immediate thing that jumps out at me at this list is, why does Spain have 327 German-made tanks, which is more than Germany has themselves? If I was Portugal, I'd be feeling a little nervous. And the United States is not going to be sending Abrams tanks. I think it's been politically decided that the Leopard 2 is what needs to be announced and sent to Ukraine. Maintenance and parts and repairs will be much easier if that can be conducted in Poland or Lithuania on systems that the Poles and the Lithuanians are already familiar with. However, the United States, I'm confident in the next 2 or 3 months, they're going to make some pretty large announcements of additional weapon systems to help Ukraine. For the last 5 months, I believe, there's been about 30 Ukrainian pilots training here in the United States on the F-16, so I think this plane eventually will appear in the skies over Ukraine. I also think the Ukrainians are going to get the MQ-1C Gray Eagle drone for additional offensive purposes. But the big weapon system that nobody's really paying attention to or talking about, I mean, F-16s are cool, but I think the United States in the next month or two is going to start delivering GLSDB rockets. What the heck are these? I'm going to also link this article in a pinned comment down below if you want to read more about this. But this article is from November, and it was kind of a news event that day, but this is going to be big news if these missiles are actually delivered. Ukraine is poised to become the first operator of a 150-kilometer precision bomb. So what the heck is this? It's an M26 rocket motor with a Boeing air-launched GBU-39 small-diameter bomb on it. So in the media, they're always talking about ATACMS missiles. These can be launched from the M270 and the HIMARS launchers that the Ukrainians already have. It has a lot of destructive firepower, and it can go 300 kilometers. The problem with ATACMS missiles is they're just too expensive. They're $1 million each for the United States to give to the Ukrainians. So what Boeing and Saab have come up with is a much cheaper alternative. We have lots of these M26 rocket motors, and we have lots of these GBU-39 bombs, and you can get really good accuracy with a range of 150 kilometers. I don't know what the per unit cost would be, but let's just guess. Let's say $50,000. Which would Ukraine rather receive from the United States? One ATACMS missile that can go 300 kilometers for $1 million, or 20 of these GLSDB missiles that can go 150 kilometers. So I think this is being worked on here in the United States, and delivery can be achieved in the next month or two. But when this occurs, this is going to be a very bad week for the Russians. Because of the HIMARS launcher and the range of gimbalers with 80 kilometers, what Russia did is they just pushed all of their ammunition depots and fuel warehouses and command posts back 80 kilometers. So they're not prepared for this. If a huge shipment of these relatively inexpensive missiles can be delivered to Ukraine, then Ukraine's going to just surprise launch all of them and hit all of these ammo dumps and fuel warehouses within 150 kilometers. Now, yes, an ATACMS missile is more destructive, it's more powerful than these smaller precision bombs, but if you're hitting something that explodes on its own anyways, it doesn't need to be that powerful. So Putin and Russia knows this. They're desperate to end this war on favorable terms to them. And Putin is now signaling a readiness for peace talks if Kyiv cedes the occupied regions. So President Putin told President leader Erdogan he was open to dialogue with Ukraine if Kyiv is willing to accept the territories currently occupied by the Russian military as Russian territory forever. Fat chance that this is going to happen because if Russia is rewarded with getting to keep territory that their military took, then they're just going to pause the war with a ceasefire for a couple years, build up their defense industry at home, keep pumping out propaganda of biolabs and the Ukrainians being Nazis, and then they're just going to attack Ukraine again in a couple years. The war won't end until Russia gives up their ambition of stealing Ukrainian sovereign territory. Another thing that Putin and the Russians have to be worried about is their drawdown on their high-precision strategic missiles. So they've got the ground launch, the sea launch, the air launched, and here's the total number. Reznikov put out the most recent updates on the remaining stockpile of Russia's long-range precision weapons. So if we go back to February, they had about 2,200 of these missiles. These are the good ones. And now they've depleted this by 80%. They're down to only about 536. If Russia was to actually fight a war against NATO or China, they don't have the good stuff anymore to fight that war. They're putting their own national security at risk with this offensive war that is going horribly for their military. Yes, they still have a lot of these tactical missiles. For example, with their S-300 system, this is their air defense system, they still have 8,000, or they still have 6,600 of these missiles, which is why they've been looking for ways to convert ground-to-air missiles to ground-to-ground, surface-to-surface. That's not what they were designed for. It's not as accurate. It's not as effective, but Russia's going to keep trying creative things because they're desperate. The next story we should talk about is this Christmas ceasefire that was announced or offered by Putin to the Ukrainians. And this might confuse some people, but according to the Eastern Orthodox Church, they celebrate Christmas in January, not in December. The reason why is because Orthodox believers observe Christmas according to the Julian calendar, not the Gregorian calendar. But immediately, Putin's Christmas ceasefire was ignored by both sides. Ukraine had previously dismissed the truce as propaganda. I want to share a quote from Lithuania's defense minister concerning Putin's Christmas ceasefire. The killers are tired and want to rest for a day. They want a Christmas truce so that they can continue killing Ukrainians in their home country with refreshed strength. So Putin is doing everything to buy time, to stall. He wants more time in order to conscript more soldiers and develop his own domestic defense industry to keep up with the pace of weapons and supplies and support flowing in from the West. Russia can't keep pace with the industrial output that the West can supply Ukraine. Additionally, no Russian soldier was actually going to adhere to this, even if the Ukrainians agreed to it. Here is a Russian soldier filming himself, saying that if a truce was announced, a ceasefire was announced, he wasn't going to observe it anyways.
Привет, мальчики и девочки. Сегодня мы играем в игру под названием «Перемирие». Сейчас мы приедем и будем с ним мириться. Вот так. За мизинчики трупов. Идите, суки.
This guy looks like a real friendly individual. So how did Putin celebrate his Christmas? And Channel 1 State TV, for whatever reason, put out this video of Putin observing Christmas alone in the church inside the Kremlin. Could Putin look any more sad or pathetic, spending Christmas alone in the church inside the Kremlin, wearing his bulletproof vest under his jackets, listening to an FSB agent pretending to be a priest? Doesn't this guy have two daughters? Doesn't he have grandchildren? I think he's got a 30-year-old Olympic gymnast as a girlfriend. Doesn't he want to be spending Christmas with any of them? Let's check in with the frontline defenders in the city of Bakhmut. We do have significant updates in the last 2 days. But first, Prigozhin himself, this is the leader of the Wagner Group, he wants to explain why after 10 months of fighting, his private mercenary group has not captured the city of Bakhmut. The Russian military bloggers, they've already declared that Russia has taken this city 6 or 7 times. So here's Prigozhin's bizarre explanation why the Wagner Group can't capture this city.
Вопрос у всех, да, когда возьмете Артемовск. Артемовск — это крепость в каждом доме. И поэтому за каждый дом ребята бодаются. Иногда не один день, да, иногда неделями за один дом. Один дом взяли, второй дом взяли, третий дом взяли. Что такое прорвать оборону? Они вам скажут, что такое прорвать оборону. Оборону прорвать — это сегодня с утра один дом взял, прорвал оборону, а за этим домом еще новая оборона, правильно? И не одна оборона. И таких линий обороны, сколько в Артемовске рубежей обороны? Ну, если сказать 500, наверное, не ошибемся, да? Каждые 10 метров рубеж обороны.
Нам не хватает техники, БМП-3 и снарядов сотки не хватает, чтобы нам быстрее, увереннее двигаться по Артемовску.
Sure sounds like the Wagner Group is just making excuses, but this is some pretty bizarre propaganda to put out, claiming that the Ukrainian military is incredible and the Russian military is lacking ammunition and armored vehicles. So here's what's happening in the Donbass region. The Wagner Group cannot take the city of Bakhmut, and this is a public relations nightmare for the Wagner Group. So their new plan is to go around the city. So what they're doing is they're currently pushing up near a village called Soledar. This is not a very large settlement. And this region that they're pushing into is mostly just farmland. But you can see that they've made significant progress going back to January 3rd. So here's the scale down here, how much have they advanced in the last 3 or 4 days. And they've captured about, 4 or 5 kilometers advancing towards this village of Soledar. So what might potentially happen is the Ukrainian forces will withdraw and fall back to the other side of this small river, this small stream. This would make a nice natural barrier that would be difficult for the Wagner mercenaries to cross, and Ukraine has already prepared a defense line should they have to fall back to the other side of the river. The goal in the Donbass region is not offense, it's just defense. The Ukrainian military is planning future counteroffensives, but this area is only going to be mopped up by the Ukrainians probably last. So the defenders in Bakhmut just have to hold. And this is how bad it is. Here is a satellite image before and after of the same neighborhood outside of Bakhmut. So this satellite image is from June, and here is the satellite image from yesterday. This is January. And just look at all of the pockmarks from the artillery rounds. The Russian ground forces are incompetent. They're incapable. They have tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, but they're really bad. So the only thing the Russian military can do is just level everything with artillery, make it uninhabitable or unsafe, and hope the Ukrainian ground forces just withdraw from the area. I don't think this is a winning formula for the Russian military long term. They're gonna run out of artillery in order to keep up this pace of fire. Let's check in with our Cossack defender in the field. I actually don't know his name or call sign. If anyone can tell me in a comment down below, what's his call sign? I want to know what to call this guy. He's been vlogging from the city of Bakhmut for almost a month now. In the translation, they translate it wrong and they say December 7th, but he does say January 7th in the video.
Вітання, Україна, місто Бахмут, 7 грудня. Друзі, оперативна ситуація по місті Бахмут стабільна, напружена. Вчора, вночі і вдень тривають бої тяжкі, штурми, намагання ворога просунутися до міста. Але лінія оборони стоїть, лінія оборони тримається. Незважаючи на колосальні втрати, ворог намагається залізти в місто. Але наразі лінія оборони стоїть.
Bakhmut continues to hold. But let's check in with the Russian forces. How are they doing on their front lines?
وجابت استهدف بالسجاي بلا بارتكره هو يقصي لك بارا دين بلا توجي تاعي ده فين او تكنيك هري خنا واري بدور مار بيختره بيجي بلا بدور مار بيقول عند عمل نقول بيرو وين جبله بيزدسنا موبيليزاسيون يوم كل بيت مو كل رهلا يومني يا ما يني بغيت الله تقدر الدنيا شايف كمان ده وين ما تختخ عارمي نو بخسي بالله دي بتنا خفيف واستقدت وقتقدت
Мне кажется, бежки.
Манна передовой манна бежки.
Бастыгым белән хәтта поехали, он белән аспысы.
И нас битте бу. Пиздец ачыктан. У калиеду вок гәдбә. Сумма катарама көтегәннәрем булды falan диеләр. Анда көл бетә хөҗүм көлдү, билет. Армия мишү дилетим дагы токтулыр бата, билет. Агыды дәризин калама.
Армия мире.
Билет. Бу парат кыркыймын дәл көтөлдүр ай. Техника хойны. Артиллерия кантадыр пилет, он тоны тыдыр, билет. Куй көрбәк күн. Дәвиден тытылыктым дип. Бардак нахуй. Пехота ведь, а мы тут.
Сирегар дина бедләде бетен зайын.
Бие вурдук жоннор, передовой көр. Көннөрү жоннор билет. О каханары билет. Тогонсуларга билет. Усмалар барамы билет.
These men don't have food or water, but they still have cigarettes. I feel like in a nutshell that sums up Russia. But if these men want to survive, if they want to live, they need to immediately lay down their arms, put their hands in the air, and start walking towards the nearest Ukrainian position. That is their only hope of survival, because if they try and retreat, if they try and fall back, they're going to get shot and killed by their own soldiers. Last couple clips I have for you. The first one is of Russian state TV, their broadcast on Christmas Day. At the same time, while Russia is criticizing the decadent culture of the West and declaring the United States the land of Satanism and Nazism, they keep stealing our culture, they keep stealing our songs. They're about to perform in Russian Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You. Yeah, I don't think Mariah Carey got any royalties from this live performance. Mariah Carey, please don't give me a copyright strike just for playing the song that they stole from you. But let's listen to some real Christmas carols. These are being sung by women and children taking shelter underground as the Russian military continues to target civilians. Not the best way to spend your Christmas, but better than living in Russia. Final clip I have for you is Carol of the Bells being performed by Ukrainian defenders. That's all for this update video. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments or questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.